Hi, GameBro Advance here again, and in this episode I want to show you why you should play Pocky and Rocky with Becky. Released in Japan during the first year of the Game Boy Advance, Pocky and Rocky with Becky came to North America a year later in October of 2002. As the third entry in the Pocky and Rocky series, Pocky and Rocky with Becky was the first since Pocky and Rocky 2 back in 1994 on the Super Nintendo. Quick backstory here, in 1986, a Japanese game developer Taito brought a game called Kiki Kaikai to arcades, which wound up garnering some popularity. After a few years, Taito then lent the property to the studio Natsume, who developed a version of Kiki Kaikai for the Super Nintendo, which was given the name Pocky and Rocky in 1992. Along with its sequel, the series developed a bit of a cult following, although it went dormant for the rest of the decade. Fast forward to 2001, Taito decided to revive the series again with the help of Natsume and a Japanese studio, Ultron. Since Nintendo had been heavily marketing the Game Boy Advance as a handheld Super Nintendo, it only made sense to bring back fan favorites like Pocky and Rocky and give them their own portable title. Met with mixed reviews, Pocky and Rocky with Becky was left with a 57% Metacritic score, which isn't going to do much to impress anyone. However, I think there is some enjoyable shoot-'em-up content here. While the game is not heavy at all on story elements, the plot is set up by a cutscene explaining that an evil ghost that was once sealed away in a cave has now escaped, and the titular trio join forces to track him down. First, you've got Pocky, a Shinto shrine maiden. Her special ability is to shoot exploding cards. Then you've got Rocky, a tanuki, otherwise known as a raccoon dog in Japan. His special ability is to shoot enemy-seeking guided leaves. New to the Pocky and Rocky series is Becky, who can shoot cards in multiple directions. A fun fact I learned about Becky during my research of this game is that she's not exactly a newcomer when it comes to the Kiki Kaikai series. In 1987, a version of Kiki Kaikai was created for the Japanese Famicom disk system to incorporate multiplayer, and so a second character named Miki was introduced alongside Suyo, aka Pocky. So it's cool to see they brought back Becky, or Miki, after so long. I'm not sure if Becky is an exact translation for Miki, but for the flow of the game's title, it works. What the game doesn't necessarily tell you is that all three characters do play a little bit differently. For example, Rocky does not do as much damage as Pocky or Becky, but is the only one with the homing projectile advantage, as it allows you to be more effective while evading enemies. As a more defensive mechanic, Pocky and Becky can wave what's called their gohei, which is a wand with streamers attached to it. This deflects most enemy projectiles and can also take out enemies. Naturally, Rocky's version of this is to swing his tail. Universally, all three characters have access to what's called a crescendo, which is essentially a screen-clearing special attack triggered by using L or R. At the start of every stage, you'll see this indicated by a yellow orb icon at the bottom of the screen. What I like is that you can find more hidden throughout each stage to add to your inventory. Also hidden in lantern posts are different colored ofudas, which provide different types of ammo. If you're wondering what an ofuda is, it's essentially a type of card, but on screen it looks more like a tag. Each character's unique attack is activated when you find a purple ofuda. The red ofuda changes it to a fire attack, the yellow ofuda increases the range, and the blue ofuda increases the damage. Another thing the game doesn't tell you is you can enhance the level of a particular effect if you can manage to find 3 of that ofuda, so there is a bit of optimization embedded in here. That can be useful depending on the boss you face as well. The game features 7 moderately short levels, and right off the bat the enemies will come flying at you. As you can see, the art style is based on Japanese mythology. Stages are filled with several types of spirits and other creatures that shoot projectiles at you non-stop. There really isn't a dull moment throughout, so you won't last long by standing around, but that's one of the things I enjoyed most. Throughout each stage, you might also find hidden items which can trigger an assist character that will help take out enemies for you or even grant you temporary invulnerability. An average run through this game should only take you around an hour or so. There's no save feature, but instead it offers a password system similar to the one I spoke about in my last episode on Spider-Man Mysterio's Menace. One downside here is that there's no option to swap characters in between stages. And yet again, this is another Game Boy Advance game with no multiplayer option, which is a real bummer considering Pocky and Rocky was designed for co-op. Overall, I think this is still a worthy recommendation for fans of shoot-'em-up style games as well as fans of the SNES Pocky and Rocky series. I get why critics were harsh on this game though. It feels like there could have been more of everything added in. But I think what gets overlooked is that it was meant to feel more like a sequel to Kiki Kaikai, and not so much Pocky and Rocky, as it captures more of the look of that original 80s arcade game. The most deflating thing about Pocky and Rocky with Becky is its value on the physical cartridge market. Since it didn't sell phenomenally, the amount of copies out there is rare, and for that reason they go between $200 and $300 normally. However, the great news is that it'll remain available on the Wii U eShop until closure next year for only $8. Alternatively, Tatsume revived the franchise yet again this year with the release of Pocky and Rocky Reshrined, which is a great sequel reboot that I highly recommend. Well, what did you think? Did you know a Pocky and Rocky sequel existed on the GBA? Are you a fan of the originals on the Super Nintendo? Let me know in the comments, and also let me know what other games you'd like me to cover in future videos. Thanks for watching!